Let's dive a little deep in on the training because you're a world champ. We're talking DFAC world champion. You stepped on stage, like you said, with guys like David Kay, Nathan Williams, also world champions. And the people want to know when we're talking about the training, we're talking about these specific details around like training volume, intensity of effort, some of these details. Would you be open to just talking a little bit about that?
I'm very strategic, especially after shows, how I align my training. The most important thing is to be able to get judges' feedback. And at the end of the day, bodybuilding is very subjective. But if you realize that multiple judges are actually, stating certain things, it's actually something that you need to work on. So you need to take that, constructive criticism serious, especially if you want to be able to excel in the sport. Instead of being, I call it airheaded about the feedback that you get, like, oh, what is this judge talking about? Da 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 da. You take that as a indicator to be better. So for me, especially in 2019, that was a big thing for me. Like overall, like I had a good base. The conditioning was there, so I wasn't really known for bringing conditioning, but they said I had to bring up my size, especially for a guy that's tall. So it's really hard for us to fill our frames out. So
How tall are you?
6 foot.
Oh, dang, you got that Arnold height, man. That Arnold Schwarzenegger height, right?
Yeah. So, and I think as someone did it's like not a podcast. They did a podcast talking about the bodybuilders all over, and they'll see me in my tracksuit, and it's like, oh, this guy just looks so skinny. And then when I take it off, it's like Transformer 2. It's actually crazy to see because people would see me and be like, oh, yeah, I wonder what's under there. And like, it even shocks me half the time, when I'm competing, just to see what my body looks like and what it does. Like, every time I compete, I get in shape. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? Or like, wow, not to stray from training, but for me, I know when to turn it on and when to back off, right? So, and that's really important because that, especially for a person like, going through a long prep, normally I prep 6 to 8 months or sometimes longer. So my training style, I'm very heavy on compounds. So, deadlifts, bench, and the squat. I've been leaning more towards like hack squats now. I don't know if it's an age thing, but just more so like I'm not old by the way, but just from my body, like I'm trying to be smarter about the decisions that I'm making. I used to get under 495 on squats. Like I'm more of a power lifter style trainer training. I like powerlifting style training, and then I'll work on my accessories around those areas as well too. So I'm very focused on the numbers that I get when it comes to like tracking for squats and my compounds because I feel like that's key components and just giving me the surety that I'm actually putting on new tissue or actually getting. So the stronger I'm getting, I'm realize, okay, that's an automatic indication that I'm adding new tissue or getting stronger. And then I'll work on the smaller muscles around those areas just to kind of create that more aesthetic look. But I feel like intensity does play a significant factor because your off season actually determines your season. And where I see a lot of competitors go wrong, they'll go so hard during their off season and then take a cut as in like, oh well, I can cut back on my weights because I'm cutting back on my food. But you need to prioritize, rest and your recovery so that you can continue to perform as close as you can towards what you were doing in your off season. And that's what actually helps you keep that muscle and be able to actually sometimes I've seen people grow during a prep and it's just because the stimulus on the muscle and being able to fuel the muscle exactly what it needs, right?
And when you're talking about execution, basically, that's what we're discussing here now, the execution, making sure that that's on point with the progressive overload, making sure you see
Overload.
those numbers go up, right?
Go
But
up.
when we're talking
Exactly.
about, yeah, and we're talking about like rep ranges, what's that look like for you for these compounds?
So for compounds, I'm a big believer in, trying to keep between the 8 to like 15 range. If I'm realizing that I'm going, more than 15 reps, that's, I feel like I'm building more endurance. So I would actually start to use that as a, indicator. Okay, it's time to bump up. And for progressive overloading, like, I'm deadlifting think my max now is like 635. For me, that's like my favorite movement. I feel like that's like one of the once executed properly, that's like the best thing to be able to build your physique overall. It just stimulates the body from top to bottom. From a training standpoint, sorry, go ahead.
You do those on your back day? Because for the listeners, it's you do because you do the push, the pull, and then you have two leg days, right? That's 4 days per
Yeah,
week training. So do you
yeah.
do those deadlifts on the pull day or on your one of your leg days usually?
I do deadlifts on my back day. So on my
Okay.
pull day, that's my compound. And then for legs, I would split hamstring and glutes. So I would have hamstring and glutes one day, and then I'll do quads and glutes another day. Just so that they can get equal attention. Because like even, during when I first started competing, the growth in my quads, it was going one way, but my hamstrings weren't getting that same equal attention. Because by the time I get through training for quads, I'm already like exhausted. So it's like, okay, yeah, let me just go do a couple of hamstring curls. And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I trained my legs,
Mm.
So I realized after splitting that, like my hamstring basically became its own person, it's like it had its own attention. So, I feel like, splitting those up, it means it helps a lot with growth. But yeah, from an intensity standpoint, like it's really important to train with intention because we can get into the gym and then, it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm just going through the motion and movements, but at the same time, it's like, okay, how is this stimulating for me to be able to get more growth, or why is my performance going down instead of up? So those are the things that I'm very mindful of, especially during prep. And then knowing when to back off, meaning if like, I had a long day and I have deadlifts tomorrow, then I would reserve that for like another back day instead of burning myself out on the Tuesday. I'll wait till next Tuesday and just focus on another movement that I'm able to actually sustain the same momentum going forward with my lifts. So I'm very mindful of when I do certain compound movements, especially when it comes to listening to my body. And that's actually a big key factor in like avoiding burnout. A lot of people go through long preps and they'll start motivated and gassed, and then they start to go like this. And then all that does is like it doesn't keep your physique fresh. It burns you out to the point where your performance starts to go downhill. And obviously, like, being at the beginning of prep, you're having more food, you have more energy, but it's being able to continue that same trajectory up. You'll have days where you dip, but it's like more so like, okay, you need to find a way to be able to apply yourself during your training so that you can be able to last throughout your entire prep. That's so
And
that you can bring your best.
absolutely. And you find that your training, or I should say it like this, your training is the same pretty much from when you transition from off season to prep. You're just trying to maintain as much strength as possible, but like everything else is kind of similar, or
Yeah, so I basically train the same throughout the year. I feel like keeping it basic is the best way to go. Like I've seen people change their programs. The only thing I would do per se is just change up how I have it lined up. So it's like, say for example, I want to have a little switch. I'll just do back on Mondays and then chest on Tuesdays. The body is set up a certain way for a certain reason. Obviously there's new movements, there's things that you could try, but I feel like keeping it as basic as possible, it will literally enhance your physique. Because then what happens is if you're constantly switching to different movements, you're not giving your body time to actually compound and grow. You're actually changing it. So you're confusing mind to muscles like, okay, I have to relearn how this feels, or I have to relearn this movement. So it's like at that point in time, whilst you're there building, compounding on a movement that you've been doing for like the last 10, 13, 15 years, you try to change it to something else, then your body has to relearn how that feels, right? So that obviously takes time. It might feel good because you're like, oh yeah, I feel sore, or I feel like I had good connection with that movement. But at the same time, I feel like I would rather do 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years of doing deadlifts versus trying to find another movement that would, try to give me that same feeling. Because
right?
I would have then compounded all these years of deadlifts and perfected, then built a solid foundation off of it. And then if I wanted to add that somewhere, another movement in my program, then I would not replace it, but as added in there as a added movement towards my training.
So even for the deadlifts, you would even go up as high as 15.
Yeah, so depending on the weight, so I normally do like sets for 4 to 5.
Okay.
So for me, I do a warm-in set, and then I'll start off with 15, and then my first 3 sets would be between 12 to 15 reps. And
Mm.
then once I get to stimulating, well, my back is in a position where, starting to get fatigue. I start to be a bit more smarter with my movement. And then I'll aim between 8 to 15. So I'll push for
Okay.
15, but at minimum 8 reps, especially on the heavier weight.
And you would say like how many hard sets would you say you're doing per exercise for the most part, like on average?
Two.
Two hard sets per
Yeah,
exercise.
two
Yeah.
hard sets, yeah.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
try
And
to
we're,
get blood going and then I get into like the grits of it. Yeah, I feel like that's where growth is for me as well too.
yeah. And why is it not like three or four? Maybe someone's listening, they're curious about that.
So I feel like, you have to have reps in reserve because you can't, in my opinion, as a bodybuilder, just even a gym goer, you can't give your all to every set. So you have to like reserve that your fuel for where it's most important. And for me, I feel like it's those last two sets, like where I actually get that extra, I need that extra push or I need that extra energy. So I do reserve reps or I do save energy for those last reps or those last sets, I should say.
Right, right. But what I meant, sorry, maybe to make it more
Oh,
clear, like you finish those two hard sets, right? And you're like, yo,
okay.
I'm gonna go for a third one. No, you don't do that. But
Oh,
how
no, no,
come?
no.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So,
because then I know there's other movements that are
mm,
important as well too. So then I would save that energy towards those as well.
gotcha.
Sometimes your mind could, say, okay, I have more in the tank, but you have to also realize where you are in your training session. It could be at the beginning, it could be towards the end. So then you're risking yourself either getting injured or you're then risking yourself to not be able to perform better on your other movements as well too. So you have to be
Right.
really strategic with your training. Like I said, we some days we might get in the gym and we're so gassed up, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do 3 sets of deadlifts. It's like, I feel good. I'll do 6 sets, and then next thing you know, you have no energy left to give the attention to the rest of your training, right? So then
Yeah.
your physique starts to suffer. So then you end up creating an imbalance in actually what you actually came in there to do. So
Yes.
it's like
That's facts.
you're being able to create steady growth, proper growth, knowing that you're building on your foundation. And then that one training session is not end all be all. You have more sessions to be able to continue to grow, right?
Right. And you would say those two hard sets are pretty close to failure, but you're not like failing on that set, or it
Yeah, so
depends on
they're
the
they're
movement.
so they are pretty close to failure. For me, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's your thoughts on training till failure? I feel like personally, like it's not something that it's like more risking for injury, and you're also, you're overstimulating the muscle. So I actually don't try to train to failure. I just try to fail. Well, I try to train almost to failure, but just reserving not just for energy reasons and also for being able to get through the rest of my movements.
Yeah. I make sure I can complete that rep, but it's
You're
a
set
grinder. Like it's a
to
struggle.
get there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, I know the next one I'm not going to get it for sure. I know
Yeah.
I'm confident because I've been training for years. I know that if I try to do one more, I won't do it or I won't be able to complete it. If I was able to complete it, I'd maybe need like a forced rep to make that happen. So I'm not going to do that one. Usually, sometimes it happens by accident. You're training hard, you get a little bit
Yeah.
greedy. You get greedy
And
and
then you
then
try to get that extra one in. Yeah, that's
yeah,
very
but
true.
then it's just a partial, and then we stop it there. So that's usually for most exercises how I approach it. With like a pull down though, sometimes the range just kind of you don't get as far down,
That
and
far down.
technically,
Yeah.
so it depends on the movement, right? Like a
Movement as
press,
well.
yeah, for a press, it's like usually I'm when I can no longer get the full range, I kind of just I stop
You
there,
just
right?
stop. Yeah.
Yeah, but sounds like you're similar, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. Very
Yeah.
similar approach. I used to train different. I was just like, going to the gym. I never used to count reps. It's just go, 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 go until failure. And all that does is like it just, it sets you up for failure. So I've gotten more injuries doing that versus
Mm,
actually training more strategic. So, you just have to approach your training style with a actual plan. You can't just get into the gym and just train blindly. You have to actually have purpose behind what your movements that you're doing, and how much this exercise or this movement needs to get this amount of attention or this amount of reps. And then you just deviate based on your growth and also the things that you need to actually bring up.
That's true. And to your point, actually, real quick, I'll mention this. It also is dependent upon the movement. Like on a leg extension, because I'll split it up, like I'll do it where I'll maybe focus on the top portion with a little bit less weight than the bottom, than the rest of the range of
The rest of
motion.
the range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's really heavy. That's like the full stack I can do on certain leg extension machines, right? And it's pretty much to the point where Like I can barely move the thing and that's fine. But like for like a squat or like a deadlift, no, absolutely not, man. We're not
No,
playing with partials on a squat or deadlift. It's
a
like
squat
either
or
I can
deadlift. Yeah.
yeah, it's either I can complete the whole thing or it's not happening,
Not
right?
not good at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
depends on the
Very true.
movement too.
So yeah,
Yeah,
there's certain movements that you can get away with that on. Yeah,
for
especially like
sure.
leg extensions as well. Sometimes I have in my mind like, okay, yeah, 12 reps, and then you just get this feeling like, okay, I can do 20, and then you can keep going because it's just more so of like a accessory versus like the bigger movements like the squat or the deadlift and the bench press.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, for those listening, definitely movement specific, machine specific, depending on the machine you're on, or if you're using dumbbells or barbells, all these things play a role in whether or not that's going to be appropriate, right? Like the
Yeah.
failure thing. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure.